Good evening, everyone. Welcome to PMI Common Ground webinar series, season 3. I am Monica Mudum Shetty, and along with me, I have Krishna Srinivasan, and we shall be moderating the session today. As always, this season is always about you, providing value and insights on topics and themes that are most relevant for you. In the last session in March, 27th March, we had with us 3 industry veterans, Susmita Mukherjee, Vineet Kumar Chandra, and Umesh Mehtar, in discussion about the future of project management as a profession and how project professionals can stay relevant despite the technology disruptions. And thank you for all the good feedback post the session. We are very glad that you loved it. As always, please keep the feedback coming. It helps us to take forward your feedback in the upcoming sessions. Now, a few housekeeping items before we dive into today's session. There is no speaker presentation as it's going to be a conversation. If you have any questions during the session, please put them in the questions tab on the right side of your screen. On the right side of your screen, you can also see the chat box and details of the attendees. At the end of today's session, that is right after the Q&A and announcements, we will move to the lounge area, which is an open networking forum where you can connect with all the other peers, all the other audience on the session. So do not log off immediately, stay tuned. Now, today's session, episode 3, is based on the theme From Bench to Boardroom, How to be a Change Maker. And for this, we're super excited to have with us Mr. Krishna Kumar, founder and CEO Simplilearn, in conversation with Dr. Srini Srinivasan, Managing Director, PMI South Asia, on key entrepreneurial skills and the right attitude that is needed to manage project challenges. Mr. Kumar has a successful track record of building new ventures, and he has imagined the need for constant reskilling and lifelong learning way before it got established as the only way for professional advancement. Simplilearn's humble beginning as a blog to one of the largest global players in professional certification training is a testimony of his vision, grit, and execution. He has been awarded the CEO of the Year in 2016 by the CEO magazine. He has also been recognized as Fortune 40 Under 40 leader 3 years in a row. He has also been part of the Economic Times 40 Under 40 business leader. And Dr. Srini, Managing Director of PMI South Asia, has been CEO, entrepreneur, and global management consultant with over 30 years of experience at the intersection of professional services, technology, and leadership development. Mr. Krishna Kumar and Dr. Srini, thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of everybody, including the attendees, I would like to welcome you for the session today. Dr. Srini, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Welcome, everyone, and a special welcome to you, Krishna. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I think the theme of today's session really typifies your journey, Krishna, from bench to boardroom. And it's a journey that is both fascinating and full of learning. And I'm hoping that we can draw some of those learnings out of you in the next half an hour or so. So one of the first things that many of us in the audience are interested in is your entrepreneurial journey. Many of us, as you know, are in corporate roles, and many of us have a tickle in the back of our minds wanting to start our own businesses, wanting to be our own boss, and so on. So I think I'd like to have you help us understand, what does this entrepreneurial mindset look like that helps you make that journey and helps you reach the kind of destinations that you've reached?
So thanks, Dr. Srini, and thank you for the invite. I think it's good to do something related with PMI. After so many years, I think PMI was the first program that we started Simplilearn with. So a lot of emotional connect I have with anything to do with PMI. So really thank you for the invite. And hello everyone. Glad to be speaking with all of you. I also identify myself as a project manager. I think entrepreneur also is as well as an entrepreneur. But if I have to identify a profession that I relate myself with, it is project management. So really glad to be talking to all of you, and assume that those who are attending are doing some kind of project management, some kind of team management, or some kind of technical leadership as part of your role, and that's why you are interested. That's why you have joined this session today. So, Dr. Srini, coming to your point, see, I think there are different versions about different leaders on what is an entrepreneurial mindset, and who should end up becoming an entrepreneur. Based on my learnings, what I have learned over the years is that you should you should get, if you are really passionate about something, if there is something that you can really relate very well, doing that gives you a lot of joy, then you can do something good in any areas. Like when it comes to my business, I started Simplilearn. It was a blog that became a leading global company today. But when I right from the days of my blogging, I was really enjoying what I was doing. And what was I was doing? I was sharing my learning of a previous startup that I built from '99 to 2007 and sold it in 2007 to a listed player. So I started sharing my learnings, and the learning started resonating with people, and that's how I got to know that there are a lot of people all on internet who are looking for a resource to learn and upgrade themselves way back in 2009 2010. So that became the idea on which I started building on. But this whole process of sharing knowledge, looking at being happy that I'm making an impact in someone's career, I think that was a very satisfying experience. So when I used to do something and learners would post messages back to me that, okay, I followed what you suggested and I did so and so good, it was such a satisfying experience that I kept on doing that. So I think for me, that's the number one trait for an entrepreneur, that they strongly believe in what they do. Now, this is a trait which can be very easily be done in a corporate environment also. Like there can be cases wherein you're working on some kind of project, but you're not enjoying. You don't end up doing your performing your best. But there are projects, there are like assignments which you really care about, something that really gives you a lot of satisfaction. You end up giving your best in those kind of assignments. So when it comes to building your own business, I think doing something that you really like will allow you to go for a longer term, because business is very uncertain. You think about all those things that can go right, but all of them go wrong. And if you're not interested in that idea, or you're not passionate about that topic, you might lose heart, and you will think about going back to the corporate world. So finding something that you really like is one such trait. The second is your risk taking ability. Now that is something that is not natural for people. Like we have so much of so many constraints. We have family to take care of. We have EMIs and loan. So that's not so easy to do. So there, I have always suggested people that the best time to get started with your own business is when you're very, very young. When you're fresh out of college, best time to get started. But there's a common misconception that a lot of people have, is that let me first get an experience and then I'll try to start. See, time and again, the world has proven, and you can look at the current Indian startup scene also. Most of the unicorn CEOs are either in 20s or in 30s today in our own country. So they didn't have a number of years of experience before they get started. So these will be my two suggestions, that you need to plan your finances and have the ability to take risk for a longer period. But if you really are very, very keen in a certain area, you will not regret being an entrepreneur, because at the end of the day, you're enjoying what you're doing. What more do you want?
So what I took away from that, Krishna, is that number one, whatever you're passionate about, whatever makes you excited, is something worth exploring, even if you're in a corporate role.
Yep.
And the second thing, obviously, is you need to take risks, and you need to recognize that those risks are risky. There's no guarantee of success.
Yep.
So in that environment, how would you advise many of us in the audience to look at identifying both of these criteria that you talked about? One is passion, and the other is risk-taking. What is it that in your mind would help us become more alive to those two aspects?
Dr. Srini, I think that's a great question, and let me just talk to you about the typical corporate setup, right? In a corporate setup, what I see is that everybody wants to follow a proven path. Let's say there's a large company, they have a big department, a large team. Everybody wants to manage that large established team, right? But in a corporate setup, also there are a lot of every corporate is trying to do some innovation. They want to build new businesses, they want to build new unit, and they always look for people who are ready to maybe let go of a large team or large project or a large assignment that they're managing and start from the basics. I don't see a lot of people who work in a corporate setup willing to take that risk. So that one example of risk. And real growth will happen if you really identify those small projects and make it really big. That's how you get noticed within an organization. That there something that was an idea, you took that idea and made it really big. So that one thing that I see a lot of people try shy away from taking. Another I have seen in my own experience is that let's say you are evaluating two career options. Like a lot of people work in large company and you are evaluating two career options. One career option is that again joining another large organization, established big name in the industry. Another is joining in a smaller unknown setup, right? Many times these unknown setups might not be in a position to pay you as well as the smaller setup, but they might compensate you by giving you some kind of equity which can become pretty big. I again see a lot of resistance in people mind in accepting this fact that I was getting paid X and now I'm getting paid X minus. But imagine so many cases, right? Imagine people who left Google's job to join a Facebook when Facebook was not Facebook. And imagine the kind of personal satisfaction they derived because they actually were part of a journey from something nowhere from becoming one of the largest companies in the world. And in the process, not only they got to learn a lot, they also felt satisfied. They also made a huge amount of money. So the initial sacrifices that they made was nothing compared to the bigger outcome that they eventually achieved. So I think in corporate setup, like people who have been part of corporate setup for 10 plus years, I have seen this as a big resistance, right? I'm not seeing them doing either of two as much as they should be.
Very good point. I want to, for the audience's benefit, I want to underline something that Krishna just talked about. Even those of us that are in corporate roles, every one of our organizations says they are about innovation. They're about transformation. They're about digital transformation or business transformation. And within every one of our organizations, as Krishna pointed out, there are small units that are focused on innovation. And I think, Krishna, the management gurus have a term for that, entrepreneur, as opposed to entrepreneur. So you can be an entrepreneur within an established setup. And you can be an innovator within an established setup. Many years ago, I remember talking to Tom Peters, the management guru, and he said, I've done lots of studies in Silicon Valley in terms of where does innovation happen. And he says, what I found is that in virtually all cases, it does not happen in the R&D department. It happens in different parts of the organization. It happens where customers get involved and have ideas, where people in organizations have ideas and they act on it. So Post-it is probably one of the best examples you can think of that. So that's a very, very valid point. Let me transition to the second topic, which you've already identified, and that is risk-taking. You've talked about the fact that one has to take calculated risks, and especially some of us who are right out of college, or some of us who are in mid-career. What advice would you have for both groups of people in terms of what does calculated risk look like?
Actually, I lost you, Srini, for a moment.
No, so you talked about risk-taking as the second key aspect of entrepreneurship. And I'm saying in the audience, there are probably two groups of people. One who are fairly new to the business world, maybe out of college in the last year or two, and then many others who are in mid-career. And what advice would you give to both of these groups of people in terms of what does calculated risk-taking look like, and how to look for the right ways to take risks, so to speak?
Yeah, sure, Srini. So I think, see, first, let me just tell you that a risk is a risk. However, like calculation you do or however planning you do, something or other might go wrong. So as long as you are very, very passionate about an idea, you should be okay to live with that risk and be prepared for something, everything that you have planned not going as per the plan. Now, those who are mid-career professional and if they really want to do something exciting and being part of a large company, I think one simple risk can be that try to get into a relatively young companies who need your kind of experience and are ready to offer you responsibility that you always wanted to take, but not getting those kind of opportunity in the larger companies. I think that itself can be a starting point, right? So that for the mid-career professional, because you already are you already have a lot of responsibility, and one fine day your responsibility can't go away, right? So I think that can be a good starting point. Those who are young and fresh out of college, you have all the possibilities in front of you. You can do pretty much everything. Right? I think there are a lot of people who are ready to back you. You just need to keep your options open and try out every other thing. You need not settle into one role just to get. As soon as you're out of college, you should not just get identify a role and get settled into. You can try various things before you decide on what is your calling and what is that you eventually want to do. Having said that, I also see a question, and I just wanted to make a statement that if you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs all across the world, not only in India but across the world, all of them had a very modest beginning. They were not very strong from their family, but they went on building some of the largest businesses. So if you are passionate about an idea, you think that you have something that can really become successful, there is no lack of capital in this world. There is more money available than there are good ideas and good team. There are a lot of people ready to back good ideas and good team.
Excellent. I want to explore something else that you talked about earlier, and that is there's no guarantee of success when you try to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And probably more startups don't make it than those who make it. And I'm sure you yourself, in your journey, have seen both the ups and downs. Can you speak about that aspect of failure is in many cases to be expected, and failure is a learning tool. You've talked about that before in other places.
Yeah. So, Srini, I strongly believe, see, if you look at the chances of a startup becoming successful is only 10%, right? In spite of having the best idea, in spite of having all the capital and the right kind of team in place, the chances of success is only 10%. But what happens is that if you go through the process, the kind of learnings that you acquire during the process, the kind of experience that you acquire, that's highly, highly valuable. All kinds of companies, being the large as well as the smaller ones, are actively looking at hiring people who have tried doing something on their own and in the process have not achieved the desired result. So while the idea of the business might fail, but you as a professional will always be successful because you gave a good try and you can talk a lot about what you learned during the process.
Excellent. I've heard that many entrepreneurs like you, when you interview people for your own organizations, you try to probe from the candidate what have been their failures and how have they picked themselves up from that.
Yeah.
As opposed, I think that's an important element for all of us to think about, because especially in our culture, in this part of the world.
I want to add one point. See, when I hire someone for my team and someone says that he or she wants to start something on his own 2-3 years down the line, from my perspective, that's a big, big plus. I don't see that as a negative, that you want to come and work in my organization. We promote people who have original ideas, who are innovative, who want to become entrepreneur and build their own business in the future. Absolutely, absolutely, such people are welcome.
So I want to also explore another aspect. You helped found a software product company You made a successful exit. Then you started a blog that now has become one of the leading forces in EdTech. How did you translate your own learnings from the previous startup to your new startup?
So, Srini, since I have always been an entrepreneur, I think I always try to reflect upon what I'm learning on an ongoing basis and try to, so the main thing that I try at my end to identify which are the areas that I should spend time on, which are the areas that I think that I'm not completely aware of, and I should spend proactive time in making sure that I cover those points. So for that, I do a combination of different ways. One of the things that works very well for me is meeting a lot of people who are experts in the area that I want to build my expertise on, and reading a lot of books related to that topic that is highly recommended by my network. I think this is something that I keep doing it. Now I'm relating to your question is that, see, my previous company was a software product company, and Simplilearn is primarily a consumer company. Now, the way you run a B2B software company is very different than the way you run a consumer company. I was not aware about this whole transition at all. So what I did was I started meeting people who were running consumer internet businesses, and that became the starting point. So when you start meeting people who come from an area that you are not expert in, one thing leads to another, and slowly you start building your expertise.
Understood. Let me then move to another area. You opened your comments by talking about your passion for learning. You've been passionate about learning. You've been passionate about helping learners. You've been passionate about the role of technology in learning, especially for adult learners. As you look back in the last 10 years or so, how has this whole skilling bucket evolved? And then I want to talk a little bit about what do you see in the future?
Yeah. So, Srini, I think the last 10 years the world has changed a lot. I will not say only skilling, the entire world has changed. So 10 years back, internet was there, but we never thought that internet will become such an integral part of our life, right from food to taxi to pretty much everything we start doing on the click of our the button on our mobile phone. And what it has created a huge parallel economy. Now, if you look at today's, like last couple of weeks, if you take up a newspaper, the Economic Times or the Times of India, you only hear two stories, two themes of a story. One story is the horror that Corona has created for everyone, rich, poor, middle class, lower class. Everybody is impacted big time by Corona. So that's the horror story. And then there's a success story. You hear about a lot of technology company raising hundreds and millions of dollars every other week, as if there is no end to capital. Now, this has created a huge digital divide, right? Companies who are in the field of technology, they are sitting on huge cash. They are the one who are getting market share. So as a result, what is also happening is that that's where the biggest opportunities are. If anybody wants to grow in their career, the only way to grow is that get into one of those high-paying jobs, become a data scientist, become a cloud architect, cybersecurity expert, scrum master, and so on, because that's where the most of the capital is going, and that's where the future is. Now, so with this kind of phenomena pretty clear in front of our eyes, we have started seeing a huge rush among professionals to get into those areas. So when we started Simplilearn 10 years back, there are people who are aware about that if you learn something new, you can grow in your career. But that set was very, very small. But in the last 10 years, that it has accelerated in a big way, especially in the last 4 years. We see pretty much everyone is thinking about what can I learn, what skills can I acquire, what certificate can I acquire, what credentials can I acquire, so that I can make that transitions from being not in a digital economy to getting into a digital economy. So that's something that has accelerated a demand for this kind of programs in a big way.
I'm fascinated by something you just talked about. Digital divide. This is something that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about, especially in this part of the world.
Yeah.
You also talked about the fact that something like a black swan event like Corona is an equalizer. But at the same time, you have a tremendous divide between the haves and the have-nots as far as digital is concerned. How do you see that gap closing, and what type of role would education technology pioneers like you play in that?
So that's exactly what we are doing. See, we could see in front of our us that this digital divide is creating huge imbalance, right, between those who have and those who have not. And our entire business is based on this mission of making more and more people get into this digital economy. So all kinds of program, right, at entry level, mid level, as well as at the executive level, to help people make transition into those roles. In fact, what we've also done is that we also realized that not everybody can afford to pay money to learn. So we launched this initiative called Simplilearn Skill Up, wherein pretty much all our programs are for free. You can just search for Simplilearn Skill Up. The entire curriculum is available for anyone to get started with. At some point of time, you think that you need to get to a premium service from Simplilearn, wherein you learn from an instructor, we help you do projects, assignment, and case study. That's where you start thinking about paying. Otherwise, get started with learning. Absolutely no friction. You want to start now, everything is available for you to get started.
If you were to gaze into your crystal ball, you talked about the last 4 or 5 years has been tremendous change in terms of this of skilling and how people look at skilling. If you were to gaze at a crystal ball and look ahead for the next 5-6 years, what type of advice would you give us in terms of what is real out there? There's a lot of hype. What is real, and in terms of the kind of skills and capabilities that the organization of the future will be looking for, and what in your mind are the more relevant aspects of that as opposed to the hype?
Yeah. So, Srini, I'll tell you, like, I strongly believe that in the last 2 years during this pandemic, something obviously it has created so much of havoc in everyone's life, and all of us have lost somebody that was very near and dear to us. But at the same time, it has also made this world much more flat, if I have to say. Now imagine I'm working from home, you're working from home, all of us are attending this session from home. Why would companies who are based out of some of the developed economies will not hire people who are based in India and some of those low-paying economies to get the same work done? Because somebody is sitting in California and working from home, or whether they're sitting in Bangalore, or whether they're sitting in let's say Ranchi and working from home. How is it different? Everybody is in front of their Zoom or in front of their Air Meet and Hangout and Microsoft Team. So I think this is going to create huge opportunities in future. If you are skilled, your employment opportunity or your is not only limited to the geography that you are physically present. It's now pretty much the entire globe, and I think that will drive a new economy going forward in future. So my strong suggestion to anyone is that, see, anyway we don't have much to do during these days, right? We are locked inside our house. We are fearful about what is happening outside our houses. Make best use of this time. Try to acquire skills, and because skill will definitely get a lot of premium. We've already started seeing this happening in our country. After a long time, we have seen this phenomena where some of these IT services companies that had those who had created some kind of cartel. Everybody used to pay only 3-4 lakhs to entry level professional. They started opening up. They started paying premium to the skill and so on. This phenomena will only get bigger and bigger. It's best time to get skilled and be ready as and when that things start happening.
On that last point, I'm just curious. There are two sides to this coin in skilling, as you can imagine. One is what I, as a learner, want to learn to skill myself, to upgrade myself, and the other is what is the employer or the marketplace value. And typically in this part of the world, what we find is that the balance of responsibility is more towards me and less towards the employer, less towards the organization. Because many employers may not openly say, look, we want you to be skilled in X or skilled in Y, or we will help you get that skill in some form or the other. So the burden of responsibility is oftentimes on me as a learner. How do you see that changing? Because you've talked about the flat digital world and the digital divide kind of collapsing. How do you see the view of employers in terms of the value they place on skills?
So, Srini, I want to just tell you this. This might not be a very good like diplomatic statement, but think from the company's perspective, right? The companies are thinking about what's good and bad for them. Obviously, if the employees are skilled and they have more knowledge within the organization, it's good for the company. But eventually, when the company is prioritizing, they are prioritizing company's goal first, and everything else is second. Now, if you are an individual, you are the most important person. So why should you let somebody else prioritize what you should do and what you should not do? You should take charge of your career. You should take charge of your life on your own. And now there are so much options available for skilling, right? From free that I told you, and somebody's written also that they have been using Simplilearn free app to all kinds of paid option at different price point. Why should you not go ahead and use that option and get ahead? The payback period is so short that you acquire some skills, if you really master it. There are so many different employers waiting to hire because there's a huge demand supply gap when it comes to digital as an area. So I will strongly not suggest that let somebody else decide what you should learn. You should decide what you want to learn and which area you want to build your career on. And if that means making some investment, you should go ahead and make those investments. All kinds of options are available in the market.
That's a very important point that you just made, that we oftentimes don't stop and think about. We have to own our careers.
Yeah.
We have to be responsible for our careers. And we have to figure out what is likely to be important and get good at it.
Yeah.
So, got it. I know there's a lot of questions. Kaushik and Monica, would you like to introduce some of the questions and then we can weave back into the conversation?
Kaushik, we can't hear you.
It's not often that Kaushik is speechless, but this is one of those few times. Nope. Roger, would you unmute him, please, in case he's muted?
I think he's facing some audio issues. Let me pick it up on his behalf. Yes, we have got some questions. We can get into that, but we're happy for you to continue. I think it's a very interesting conversation as well. Loving to hear that. So we'll add in some questions for now, and then please feel free to add on if you have any further questions as we go ahead. So we have a question from Amit saying that some people keep on trying hands at various businesses and never take off, whereas some people start something and settle in a job after a few attempts at their own business. What is the right time to settle for less?
What is the right time, Monica? What is the last point?
When is the right time to settle for less? I mean, when do they give up? Because there are a lot of failed attempts when we try something, new businesses, and they kind of give up after a while. When is the right time to settle?
I think, Monica, this is a very difficult question. There is no right time or wrong time, right? It all depends upon like how much risk appetite you have. Generally, one rule of thumb that most people suggest, and I also suggest the same, is that if you are starting up something new, first make sure that you start something that you really believe in and you enjoy doing it. Don't do something just because it's a trend. Like, for example, today, EdTech is a trend, so everybody wants to become EdTech. That's not the right way to do. You should start something that you think you can make a difference. You have a differentiated approach and you're enjoying the process. That's the first thing. So whatever time you'll spend, you'll be at least doing something that you always wanted to do. And second, it's a good idea to always plan at least 3 years. Because it takes so much of minimum time to know whether there was something wrong with the idea, something wrong with the market, something wrong with your own approach, and before calling it off and moving on to something else.
Thank you. I totally agree. I think when you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you like, you'll kind of give it more than you can, and you will also be more patient with putting in more effort before you see the success. So absolutely, thank you for that. I also had one connecting question with that, which said, how do you decide whether you should change your role? You know, like when you're deciding to do a business and you've decided like this is what you want to do, but you're seeing that that's not successful as much. Do you think you should like change your route, change something in between? How soon do you think that can happen? Any
So,
recommendations?
so your question is more within the business, how to change ideas.
Correct.
I think, Monica, that's like ongoing. See, most businesses started with a certain thought, and in the process, they keep changing, they keep iterating their approach because they see what is happening all around them in the market, right? So I think that's where you have to use your entrepreneurial judgment to figure it out on is this path the right path, or within the same domain, within the same idea, should we make some tweaks and do something else? So it's like all the time that you learn from your competition, you learn from market, you learn from your pretty much the entire ecosystem. You're continuously learning. You're not say when you do a business, you are not inward focused. You're not just sitting inside a room and trying to change the world. You are constantly talking to people all across you, hearing them out, and then using your own intellect to decide that now I've heard and seen what everyone is saying. What should eventually I do? Because you'll always have limited bandwidth. Even some of the largest companies, if you speak to, they always say that okay, they have 10 different projects or 10 different ideas, but they don't have resource to start all 10 of them. So they'll prioritize two or three of them to get started. And I think all of you who are a project management professional, I think this is something that is taught also in a PMP curriculum, right? That how do you select a project? This is essentially the same. That you identify list down all the different ideas, list down all different projects, do a cost benefit analysis of all those ideas, and then select the one that makes the best sense.
Nice to see how it pretty much ties back to project management, and it's also kind of being agile mindset. What you said, I think pretty much it ties back to all of that. Dr. Srini, you have anything to add in on this?
I just wanted to explore something, Krishna, that you mentioned earlier, and that is a startup environment or a young company may not be everyone's cup of tea. And you talk about the fact that, for example, if somebody you're interviewing says, look, I want to start something on my own in the next 2 to 3 years, you would see that as a good thing. Can you speak about what is the kind of makeup that you would like to see in somebody coming in and wanting to be part of a young company, as opposed to a very established company that they may have been part of before?
So, Dr. Srini, I think this is something that we do all the time. Frankly, I'll also tell you a disclaimer, and this might not be the right, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but most of the young companies, they prefer hiring from young companies. And the reason why they prefer hiring, because they think that there's a much better cultural alignment when you hire from young companies, because most young companies, things are more chaotic. The processes are not very, very well defined. And we think of that as an plus than a minus. And I'll tell you why we think of that as a plus. Let's say, like, for example, I'll give you an example of Simplilearn. We're about 1,500 employees today. If I define very rigid process for a 1,500 employees today, but my aspiration is to become a 5,000 people company maybe within 2 years. Now, why should I define such a rigid processes where I myself know that this is not our aspiration? Aspiration is to become 5,000 people. Should I define? But if I define processes that are process and system that a 5,000 company people should follow today, it will become overkill. So it's always a fluid kind of scenario, and people need to live in this, I'll say, chaos. That you know that something is wrong, but it's okay that it's wrong. Let's leave with that, ignore and move. I'll give some very simple example, and we struggle. I think this is, if majority of the people are from the large company, they'll relate to. Let's talk about employee insurance. Okay, larger companies have, since they have a huge employee base, their ability to negotiate with the insurance provider is huge, and they can have maybe much attractive insurance scheme for their employees. Most startups have something basic that okay, you want to insure their employee and family member, but it's not as attractive as a large company. Now, let's say somebody from an established company comes and joins a young company. They get when they hear about okay, there I was getting this kind of insurance. This company is giving me such a less insurance. It becomes a big mental issue for them. That okay, how do I suddenly downgrade? And if you look at it from a young company perspective or a startup perspective, they'll say, "What is the big deal? Go and buy your own insurance. I will pay for it." If this is going to be such a big worry for you. And now this is just one a small example of a small benefit scheme, but such kind of things matter at every stage, right? Whereas when you want to move fast, you do not want to be 100% correct from all perspectives. The only thing that matters to you is that I want to win this space. I want to get this product out in the market. If something happens, we will figure it out. If something happens whereas large companies, their ability, they'll think multiple times to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Everything is in place. and that means that it's a different thought process and different way of working than younger companies, and that's why both the things don't work. People who work in a smaller company, when they go to the bigger companies, they feel suffocated that okay, we used to move so far, I suddenly have to do more operational work than the real work, and the vice versa is that how can these guys go and do something like this without getting 100% prepared from all the angles?
So that leads me to another point that you made earlier, which is managing young companies, managing startups. It's like one big project. And how is project management philosophy and approach different in a young company compared to a more established company? And how do we get ready for that if we want to go from X to Y or Y to Z?
So, there are, if you look project management also, there's this what we call traditional project management, and then there's agile way of managing projects. So think of younger companies being very, very agile. I have also seen in the last 10 years that the same project management profession has become more specialized and been called by different names. Like now, a lot of startups within their technology function, you see this role called engineering management. Engineering management is nothing but project management. But obviously, it's a project management plus technology as a domain. So not only we expect this so-called engineering managers to manage projects, manage deliverable, we also expect them to be fairly good technical experts. So that's why there's a little bit nuances. The classic project management philosophy by PMI says that if you're a project manager, you can manage a construction project also, you can manage a shipping project also, you can manage a technology project also. But when it comes to technology, there's so much of nuances that then this new function got created, engineering manager. So that's one I see last 10 years, a big change. And by the way, this is a very highly paid role within the tech companies. And then there is this another role that also I see somewhat is an offshoot of project management. If I go 10, 12 years back, is a product manager role. There was no product manager role 10, 12 years back. At least it was not that popular role, at least in the Indian tech and non-tech ecosystem also. But what do product managers do? Long back, project managers used to capture all the customers' requirement. They used to like document it in a form and then distribute into use cases and give it to different people to deliver. Now product managers do this full time, right? And again, this is a very, very highly paid role that has got emerged. But they're also again the same. It's like I see that as a more of a specialized function of project management, but again getting deep into looking at a customer requirement from all perspective and trying to provide a solution that the team can go ahead and implement it. So in a startup environment, this engineering management and product management manager roles are much more in demand, and they are much more widely used than a project manager role. I'm not come across any startup or young company they even use this designation called project manager. They either use product manager, engineering manager, or I have seen them start using program management, because again there are a lot of ongoing operational stuff they put under a program manager.
What we also see, Krishna, is that many non-engineering companies, even more established companies, are moving in that direction that you just talked about. So moving from a project to product. And oftentimes what we hear from more established companies is because they want project managers who are capable of understanding the business requirements, of being able to speak the customer's language, and of being able to treat the project journey as a discovery process that results in some tangible benefit, some tangible business benefit. So I know, Kaushik, you have some questions as well. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I think he's still facing audio issues. Let me continue. So we have the next question from Arvind, and he asks, could you share some pointers on how to secure funding? And Sandeep also suggests some recommendations to mitigate the financial risks.
So I think, Monica, first I'll start with mitigating the financial risk. See, one of the ways you can mitigate financial risk is that don't start alone. So when you start with a couple of co-founders, then maybe all of you can become each other's strength. You can also pull resources, and that becomes a starting point. Or maybe say there are 4 of you who want to do something together, 2 of you can continue working and let 2 of them work on the ideas in a full way, and then whatever 2 of you are earning, share among all the 4 people till your own venture gets to a stage where it starts paying your bills, right? So a lot of people do it. The idea sounds very strange, but many people have done it. That okay, 4 of us, 2 of us will work, our salaries become half, I share with my remaining 2 friends, and for the next couple of years till the company starts generating or the business starts generating enough cash. Now, so that's on the that's one approach. Another other approach is of like how to secure funding. There is no one answer, right? It's an ongoing process. But the good news is that there is so much of capital available in the market. There are like angel investors who invest pretty much just on a concept. Then there are early stage investors who invest when they see that concept getting into some kind of reality, and then there are bigger and bigger investors. So there's no lack of capital if you can demonstrate that you have a business that can eventually make money. I see a lot of discussions on LinkedIn from people who are completely ill-informed and ill-aware, wherein there is some fund announcement by one of these tech companies, and they will say, "Oh, this company is not making money. Why people are like to putting so much of money is such a big stupidity." But one thing that's very widely understood concept is that the costliest money that you can get is from a what we call institutional investors. To the extent people say that big borrow, loot, and then go to a VC. Because all this you can maybe escape, but if you're taking money from an institutional investor, the venture capitalist and all, there is no way you can escape that. The kind of terms and condition under which that money comes up is very, very well thought. All legal angles are already taken into consideration. So if they are spending money behind a venture, they have thought through it, and they're some of the smartest people. Like some of the smartest people work in those kind of companies. They have taken a calculated risk. If you go back 10 years back, when Flipkart was raising money after money, and they were setting records after record and losing, and every year their losses were only increasing, everybody was laughing that there is something wrong. Why are people putting so much of money behind a loss-making company? Look at eventually what happened. They created one of the largest exit in Indian startup history. Now the company is getting listed for $30 billion. For comparison's sake, not even Infosys is a $30 billion company, in spite of being 25, 30 years in the business and employing maybe 200,000 plus employees. With just 20,000 people, they built this company within 10 years. So the technology is a totally different ball game. And if you have a good idea backed by technology, there is no lack of capital.
So moving on from capital, Krishna, just going back to the roles that you mentioned, one of the questions that has come out is actually two-part questions. Today, there are like an abundant of service providers who are saying we provide online training and certification. So how do we assess quality? Number one. And number two is how does a person decide what are the right skills that they need to develop? All said and done, some of these online courses are still not accepted by all employers.
So I think there are multiple questions to your part. I think the first thing that I'll say out of these 3 questions is that you should make a call that whether you want to upskill or not. Forget about which provider you get. I'm sure if you spend some time and if you do your own diligence and talk to your friends, look at what kind of programs your friends or your classmates have used and got benefited, you can select one, right? But the most important point is that you should do something. Just being in this dilemma that should I do, should I not do, is the biggest risk to your career. So go ahead and select one of those providers based on whatever intelligence that you can gather from them. And the second part is that why should you care whether your employer is really recognizing that skill provider or not? As long as you're acquiring skills that is related to some of the high growing areas like cloud, data, cybersecurity, Scrum, and so on, there are many employers. There's no lack of employers looking for those kind of skills. And there are free resources to get started. So I suggest get started with something free, and then once you learn something free, you know what kind of questions and what kind of topics and what kind of items to look for when you go and sign up for a paid provider.
So one of the questions that does come up very often, not only in today's session, is about what are the specific courses or what are the specific areas that people can upskill towards, and you mentioned some of them. There is also a very interesting question from a armed forces veteran who says, what are the skill sets that they need to focus on when they are making the transition from, let's say, the armed forces back into a corporate career? Do you have any guidance
Yeah, so
around that?
the Kaushik, I think it again depends upon that within the armed forces also what function you're part of, right? Armed functions also have a technology wing, right? I personally know some people who have worked in those areas, and they end up doing very very specialized tech function in some of the startups also. Like for example, this whole DevOps cloud. A lot of people have done a lot of such work in even in an armed function. But if you're part of the combat and you want to come into the into the corporate world, again the careers are anything that requires general management expertise would be a good place to build your career. So right from HR function, like a lot of companies look for somebody with that kind of background in their HR team, in their admin team, in their project management core team, and so on. I'm sure armed forces also must be publishing success stories of people who moved out of armed forces and then got themselves established in corporate world.
Excellent. And finally, looking forward, right? And a couple of questions have come. What do you see is the future of online training? You think it's going to be parallel to our traditional learning methodologies? Do you see online universities combine? In fact, one of the question is, are we seeing Simplilearn University on the horizon?
So, Kaushik, I think right now our country regulation does not allow, but definitely I think that is a way in which the world is going. Now, compare. See, if you look at our educational institution in India, there is a very clear class, right? There is this top tier in universities, which maybe 100 universities in the country. Then there is 100 to 500. Then I'll say 100 to 200, and then those beyond 200 top university, there's hardly any value that lower rung of university add to a student, right? In terms of the academic credibility as well as all kinds of career assistance for them to get established is very little, right? So there is no way that area will not get disrupted. So definitely, I see all kinds of innovation happening in this space. The government is also very very supportive. They know that for a country of our size, it's impossible to build high quality universities in all nooks and corner of our country. There is also a very aspirational goal that our country has kept, something that is called GER, gross enrollment ratio. So government wants to increase the gross enrollment ratio of our adults into degree programs. In the next 10 years, they want to double it, which is an impossible goal if you have to double it by sending all the adults to an offline university. So only way possible is that there's people start going and doing those kind of degree programs online. So a lot of such things will happen. Now, if you look at it on a Simplilearn platform itself, some of the top universities tie up with us to offer programs on our platform. Like for example, blockchain is very hot these days, right? A lot of people are talking about cryptocurrency and whatnot. If you want to understand blockchain, there is a program that Simplilearn offers in partnership with IIT Kanpur. If you want to do a data science program, we have a program in partnership with Purdue University, one of the top global university. If you want to do a cloud program, we have a partnership with Caltech. By all means, Caltech is top one or top two technical university in the world. And then you want to do cybersecurity, you have tie up with MIT. Again, either number one or number two university in the world when it comes to technology. So the reason why some of these top technology companies are partnering with players like us, because they also don't see a way in which they can reach out to a wider audience unless they are using a provider like us to increase the reach and also add a lot of value add in the core curriculum that they offer.
It sounds amazingly exciting, and there are still a few questions coming up, but we will wrap up. It has been great to have you here, Krishna. Any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience, and then I'll probably switch to Dr. Srini also for his thoughts.
So Kaushik, I have just one thought that Dr. Srini and I spoke also is that strong suggestion that take charge of your career. If somebody who needs to think about you is actually you. If you don't think about you, why should anybody else think and care about you? And skill has a premium. Don't worry too much about should I go to this provider, that provider, or some other provider. There are all kinds of options available. Select one that suits your budget, suits your learning style, is recommended by your friend and family, and just go for it. This is the time. There's anyway a very limited thing that you can do sitting at home. So go ahead and do that, and try to be positive. I think there's all sorts of things happening all around us to like think about doomsday, but let's be positive. The world has seen even worse time than what we are seeing today.
Kaushik, it's been an education for me, and I'm sure for the audience as well, to kind of crawl into the mind of an entrepreneur like Krishna and try to understand what he's thinking, how he's thinking, and where he got to where he did. So really appreciate this, Krishna, especially your candid comments. And we thank you for taking the time to be in this program.
Thanks, Dr. Srini. Thanks, Kaushik. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Dr. Shini. And just to echo your thoughts about upskilling and staying positive, to everybody here on the call, if you're a member of PMI, you would have received an email from Dr. Shrini today, maybe an hour ago. PMI and PMI South Asia are also providing multiple resources for us all to not only stay positive, but also to constantly learn and upskill. Just look out under the PMI website for something called as the resources for new work ecosystem. Uh, there is also a brand new job career center in pmi.org if you're looking for a change. And finally, if you have any pending queries about certifications or memberships or anything that might be worrying you about the PMI world, there is a SurveyMonkey tool also available that you could reach out to. Again, PMI South Asia, all of us are uh, praying and hoping that all of us get through these times healthy. And like Krishna said, we also come out of this side slightly upskilled than what we went into. Right. On that note, Krishna, thank you so much once again for joining us. This is fascinating to hear from you and hear your journey and see what the future holds for. Dr. Shini, as usual, thank you very much. We are not going to have our session in April. I'm sorry, we're not going to have our session in May, and that's because we have something very, very exciting, which is the Regional Conference 2021. Again, this one is about new horizons, new strategies, and digital project management. I know that we're all spending a lot of time online, but do register for these 2 days of exciting sessions. And I'm very, very sure that you're going to come out with a positive mindset and have better skills and better networking after you attend that event. Early bird registrations are now open, and you can register at pmi.org.in/PMRC21. And with that, we wrap up for the day. The $1,000,000 question, you can use the code that's shown on the screen to claim your PDUs across the various certifications that PMI offers. More information about it, the recordings from the past sessions, all of it is available at pmi.org.in/common ground. On that note, on behalf of all of us here, we wish you well. Thanks for joining us on a weekend. And we hope that we see you again at PMRC 21. Common Ground will resume back in June, and we look forward to that as well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you all soon. Thank you.